Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster or evaluator. I'm sorry, I was fiddling with my apparatus to get either the screen or the speaker or the listener to work. I guess it's not apparatus, it's apparati. Anyway, I looked at the project and it said, give a speech to an unfamiliar audience. And I freaked out because I've been in this club for almost a year, or maybe even more than a year, and nobody's unfamiliar except maybe Ting Wei, and to a certain degree, Amy. But other than that, I've known most of you for quite a while. So I had to interpret the word unfamiliar rather broadly. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll speak about something that you are unfamiliar with. I picked the subject of China. And despite the fact that there are quite a few Chinese, I think, Linda, Matthew, I think Amy, I'm not sure. With a word like Ting Wei Lin, I guess that is probably Asian of some sort. So, but even with this large proportion of Chinese, there's probably some things that they are not familiar with. So speaking of Chinese technology, I'll start off with the Western view of Chinese technology. In the 1940s, everybody in the West was under the impression that Chinese have absolutely no technology. The reason was that they've been through what has generally been called the 100 years of emulation, which means that China was in a really, really bad state. The British, the French, the Germans, the Americans, the Japanese all carved themselves up pieces of China. And the result was that the whole country was in disintegration. And so nothing basically happened within the country itself. Okay. So in 1941, a Cambridge professor, Joseph Needham, was chosen to go to China and look at all the universities within China to see if the British university, specifically Cambridge University, could set up some cooperative arrangements with the Chinese universities. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background on Joseph Needham. He was a professor of biochemistry in Cambridge. His claim to fame right now is that he lived in the same cottage that eventually, I'm blanking out on the name, guy on relativity that couldn't speak and couldn't talk but knew everything about it. He died recently. Yeah, I'll come back to it. Anyway, he is a very famous physicist, astrophysicist. They actually shared, well, they didn't share the apartment, but they serially lived in the same apartment. So that makes him very famous. But his fame in the West is way, way eclipsed by his fame in China, because everybody in China knows of him. So before going on to China, he'd been married. Stephen Hawkins, you're right, that's the word. That's the guy, sorry. My excitement has lost my train of thought. Before he went to China, he had met a Chinese woman who was a professor at MIT. and they became lovers. And he and his wife and the Chinese professor used to go on trips together. So they were very, very, how would I say it, liberal in terms of social interactions. And on his trip, oh dear, she told him, hey, you know, I know everybody thinks that there's no technology in China, but please keep an open mind. So he went, he flew, a long story, he got to Chongqing. And on his first day there, while he was resting, he saw an old man doing a graft on a tree. And he thought to himself, this guy's doing the graft all wrong. So he went to speak to him. He spoke Chinese. And the guy says, yeah, we've been doing this forever. So out of curiosity, he went to the library and he looked up grafting. And he saw that they have been doing this sort of grafting for thousands of years, which is different from the Western method of grafting. So he thought, maybe she was right. They have more to technology than we think. So he spent 3 years doing his job of liaising with various universities. And during that time, he also took notes. He went to every library he could find, and he took notes of all the technological stuff he could find. Came back to Cambridge, and he decided to write a journal of his findings. And he wrote that it would be maybe 2 volumes. And after 2 years, he said, well, no, maybe it's going to be 4 volumes. After a little while, it's going to be 6 volumes. Right now, it is 27 volumes. And virtually everything that he found was surprising to him. And he was the guy who postulated that gunpowder, compass, paper, and printing press all came from China before it was made in the West. That was very controversial because in the West, the scientists thought that, you know, Gutenberg and those guys did all the things, paper money and so on. I am out of time, so I will have to end it there. Anyway, I have a list of all the inventions with the dates. If anybody's interested, I'll email you. Thank you.